Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, en Bogotá, Colombia, transmite UMNG Radio. UMNG Radio. Una emisora alternativa, cultural e independiente. Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Esta es UMNG Radio.
Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to UMNG Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.
Hello. Okay, good morning. Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, where we explore curious stories, surprising facts, and cultural insights from around the world, all through the lens of English learning. This is the podcast where unusual moments from history and culture become your classroom for practicing English. I'm Jorge Bermudez, teacher of English at the Department of Multicultural Studies at UMNG, part of the School of Education and Humanities. I'll be your guide through some of the most unexpected and thought-provoking topics, from forgotten inventions and everyday objects to strange ideas that quietly changed the way we live. Whether you're learning English as a second language or simply enjoy discovering how culture and history shape our daily lives, this podcast is for you. So if you're ready to improve your listening skills, expand your vocabulary, and explore the hidden stories behind ordinary things, grab your headphones, tune in, and let's speak up. Today, the history behind tattoos, once marks of identity, faith, or rebellion, now a global art form. Okay, and here we go. Marks that speak. Today, tattoos are part of everyday life. They appear on arms, legs, backs, and hands, and they are visible in many spaces that once rejected them, such as offices, classrooms, and television screens. For many people, tattoos are a way to express personality, memory, or belief. However, tattoos are not a modern trend. They are one of the oldest forms of human expressions. Long before writing systems, books, or digital images, humans were already using their own skin to communicate meaning. A tattoo is more than a drawing on the body. It is permanent, visible, and personal. Once placed on the skin, it cannot be easily removed or ignored. For this reason, tattoos have always carried strong cultural weight. Across history, tattoos have been connected to ritual, faith, social status, protection, punishment, and rebellion. At different moments, they have been respected and admired, but also feared and rejected. The same marks that were sacred in one culture were forbidden in another. In this episode, we will explore how tattoos moved across time and cultures and why humans continue to mark their bodies. By following this long history, we can better understand how tattoos reflect deeper questions about identity, power, and belonging. Now, if we go back, we discover that the first body marks were not tattoos at all. They were scars left by nature, conflict, ritual, or choice. These early marks help us understand something important, very important. Tattoos did not appear suddenly as decoration. They grew out of a much deeper human need to carry memory, identity, and meaning on the skin itself. To understand the story of tattoos, then we must begin even earlier with scars, the oldest human marks of all. And that takes us to our first segment, scars, the first human marks. Before ink, before needles, before art studios and tattoo machines, the human body was already being marked. Long before tattoos existed, people carried stories on their skin through scars. Some came from accidents or battles, others from illness or survival. But many were created on purpose. These marks were not decoration, they had meaning. Across cultures and centuries, scars have acted as signs of belonging, strength, and transformation. In many societies, a scar was not something to hide, it was something to show. It could mark the moment someone became an adult, joined a group, survived a trial, or earned respect within a community. The body became a record, and the scar was a sentence written in flesh. Anthropologists believe that scarification is one of the oldest forms of body marking in human history. In parts of Africa, Oceania, and Australia, deliberate scars were created using cuts, burns, or raised wounds. These marks told others who you were, where you came from, and what you had endured. In a world without written records, the body itself became a living document. Seen this way, scars help us understand something essential. The desire to mark the body did not begin with beauty or fashion. It began with identity, memory, and meaning. Tattoos would come later, but scars remind us that humans have long used the body to say, "This happened to me. This is who I am, and this is where I belong." Okay, now let's move to ancient ink, tattoos as ritual, healing, and belonging. The story of tattooing begins thousands of years ago, long before modern tools and studios. One of the earliest and most important discoveries is Otzi the Iceman, here in the picture, okay? Though he doesn't look like that now. Otzi the Iceman is a naturally preserved body found in the Alps in 1991. He lived more than 5,000 years ago, and his body contains over 60 tattoos. These tattoos are not decorative images. They are simple lines and dots placed near joints and areas affected by physical pain. Because of their position, many researchers believe that Otzi's tattoo were connected to healing practices, similar to early forms of acupuncture. In this case, tattooing may have served as a medical or ritual purpose rather than an artistic one. This example shows that tattoos were not always about beauty. In early societies, they were practical, symbolic, and deeply connected to survival and belief. In the Pacific Islands, tattooing developed into one of the most complex and respected traditions in the world. In Polynesian cultures, tattoos were not personal fashion choices. They were social responsibilities. Tattoos showed family history, social rank, personal achievements, and spiritual protection. The process of tattooing was long, painful, and highly ritualized. Enduring the pain was part of the meaning. The tattoo did not only mark the skin, it proved discipline, courage, and commitment to the community. The body became a living record of a person's life and place in society. In ancient Egypt, tattoos appear mainly on women, especially dancers and priestesses. These tattoos may have been connected to fertility, protection during pregnancy, or religious devotion. In this context, tattooing was linked to sacred roles and spiritual meaning. The strongest evidence comes from preserved human bodies. Several ancient Egyptian mummies, dating mainly from the Middle Kingdom, 2000 before the Common Era, approximately, show clear tattoo marks on their skin. These tattoos appear as dark blue or black dots and lines under the skin, not painted on the surface. Because the marks are embedded in the skin tissue, archaeologists know they are tattoos, not decoration or dirt. One of the most important discoveries is the mummy of a woman known as Amunet, a priestess of the goddess Hathor. Her body shows tattoo patterns on the abdomen, thighs, and arms. Modern imaging techniques, including infrared photography, have revealed even more tattoos that are visible to the naked eye. Evidence also comes from artistic representations. Some female figurines and reliefs show dotted patterns on the body, especially on the thighs, abdomen, and chest. These patterns closely match the tattoos found on mummies. Because Egyptian art was highly symbolic and consistent, repeated body markings are understood as intentional representations, not random designs. Across different continents and cultures, from the Americas to Asia, tattooing appeared again and again. The tools, designs, and beliefs were different, but the idea was the same. The human body could carry meaning beyond words. These early tattoos remind us that marking the skin has always been about making identity visible. Long before tattoos became art or fashion, they were signs of belonging, belief, and purpose. And that takes us to our next segment, from sacred marks to stigma and back again. As tattoos spread across cultures, their meanings began to change. In some societies, marks of the body were no longer signs of belonging or protection, but tools of control and punishment. In ancient Greece and Rome, tattoos were sometimes used to mark enslaved people, criminals, or prisoners of war. These marks were not chosen by the person who carried them. Instead, they were forced onto the body to show ownership, shame, or exclusion. The body became a public message of power. This use of tattoos created a strong association between marking the skin and social stigma. Over time, many societies began to see tattoos not as sacred or meaningful, but as signs of danger, rebellion, or moral failure. Religious ideas reinforced this view. In parts of Europe, tattooing was discouraged or forbidden, influenced by interpretations of religious texts that warned against marking the body. As a result, tattoos slowly disappeared from everyday life and survived mainly at the edges of society. For centuries, tattoos in the Western world were most visible among sailors, here in the picture, soldiers, prisoners, and later criminal groups. Sailors used tattoos to remember voyages, loved ones, or survival at sea. Soldiers marked loyalty or shared experience. But outside these groups, tattoos remained suspicious. This negative image lasted well into the 20th century. Then something began to change. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, tattoos started to move from the margins into the center of popular culture. One major reason was visibility. Tattoos appeared on musicians, actors, like the famous actor Keanu Reeves we have in the pictures, and especially sports figures whose bodies were already public and admired. When famous athletes displayed tattoos on television and in stadiums, millions of people saw tattooed bodies associated with success, strength, discipline, and excellence. Football players, basketball stars, and Olympic athletes turned tattoos into symbols of personal story, motivation, and identity rather than rebellion. Celebrities in music and film played a similar role. Tattoos became part of artistic image and self expression. Instead of hiding tattoos, public figures showed them proudly, explaining their meanings in interviews and social media. What was once shocking slowly became familiar. This shift changed public perception dramatically. Tattoos were no longer only linked to danger or crime, they became linked to individual choice. People began to see tattoos as ways to tell personal stories about family, memory, loss, belief, or achievement. Importantly, the stigma did not disappear everywhere or for everyone. Tattoos are still judged differently depending on profession, gender, culture, and location. But the influence of celebrities and athletes helped normalize tattooed bodies on a global scale. In this way, tattoos returned to something close to their ancient role. Once again, the body became a space for meaning. The difference was choice. Modern tattoos are usually chosen freely, not forced, allowing individuals to reclaim the skin as their own story. And that takes us to our next segment, Maori Ta Moko, identity written on the face and body. Ah, look at these beautiful faces. To truly understand tattoos as more than decoration, we need to travel to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and explore Ta Moko, the traditional tattoo art of the Maori people. Ta Moko is not simply a style of tattoo. It is a language, a history, and a public declaration of identity. For the Maori, Ta Moko has always been deeply connected to who a person is and where they come from. Each line, curve, and spiral tells a story. These marks can show a person's family lineage, social status, tribal connections, and even important life achievements. In this sense, the skin becomes a kind of living document, something that speaks before the person even says a word. One of the most powerful aspects of Ta Moko is its placement, especially on the face. Facial moko, known as moko kawae for women and moko kanohi for men, was traditionally reserved for people of high status. Wearing a facial moko was an honor, but also a responsibility. It meant that the person carried the history of their ancestors openly for everyone to see. Unlike modern tattooing, traditional ta moko was not made with needles. Maori artists used uhi, small chisels made from bone or stone. The process did not only add ink to the skin, it carved the skin. This made the experience painful and slow, but pain itself was meaningful. Enduring it showed strength, commitment, and respect for the ancestors and the community. Importantly, Ta Moko was never about fashion. A design could not simply be copied or chosen because it looked beautiful. Each moko was unique and could only belong to one person. Wearing a moko that did not represent your own wakapapa or ancestry would be considered deeply disrespectful. When European colonization began in the 19th century, Ta Moko suffered a dramatic disruption. Colonial authorities and missionaries often saw it as primitive or threatening, and Maori people were pressured to abandon the practice. Even worse, preserved tattoo heads called mokomokai were taken to Europe and displayed or sold, turning sacred human remains into objects. Despite this history, Ta Moko did not disappear. In the late 20th century, Maori communities began a strong cultural revival. Today, Ta Moko is once again a source of pride. Many Maori people choose to wear moko as an act of cultural resistance, healing, and reconnection. It is also carefully protected with clear discussions about cultural appropriation and respect. Ta Moko reminds us of a crucial idea. Tattoos can be identity itself, not just a symbol of it. They can carry memory, family, and history, and they demand to be understood on their own cultural terms. And that takes us to our next segment, Yakuza tattoos, art, crime, and stigma. In Japan, tattoos tell a very different story, one shaped by beauty, discipline, fear, and social exclusion. To understand this, we need to look at irezumi, the traditional Japanese tattoo style, and its strong association with the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime groups. Historically, tattoos in Japan did not always have a negative meaning. As early as the Jomon period, more than 2,000 years ago, there is evidence that tattoos were used for spiritual protection or social identity. However, during the Edo period, between 1603 and 1868, the meaning of tattoos changed dramatically. Authorities began using tattoos as a punishment, marking criminals on visible parts of the body to publicly shame them. These marks could not be removed, so the stigma followed a person for life. At the same time, a very different tattoo tradition was developing underground. Inspired by ukiyo-e, woodblock prints, especially heroic figures from Chinese novels like Suikoden, full-body tattoos became a form of hidden art. These tattoos were incredibly detailed, covering the back, arms, legs, and chest, often leaving a strip of bare skin so they would remain invisible under clothing. This style was later adopted by the Yakuza. For them, tattoos became a symbol of loyalty, endurance, and commitment. Getting a traditional irezumi tattoo was extremely painful and required many long sessions using tebori, a hand-poking technique rather than electric machines. The pain itself mattered. It showed discipline, courage, and willingness to suffer for the group. Ironically, the same tattoos that represented honor inside the Yakuza became a source of fear and discrimination in Japanese society. Even today, many public baths, in Japanese onsen, swimming pools, gyms, and beaches in Japan ban people with visible tattoos. This rule often applies not only to criminals but also to tourists or ordinary citizens with tattoos, reinforcing the idea that tattoos equal danger. This stigma is so strong that many Japanese people without criminal connections still avoid tattoos entirely. In Japan, tattoos are often seen not as personal expression, but as a social risk. They can affect employment, relationships, and access to public spaces. In recent years, however, this perception has started to change slowly. Younger generations, international influence, and global tattoo culture have pushed Japan to reconsider its strict views. Some tattoo artists now work openly, and some businesses have relaxed their rules, especially in cities with many visitors. Still, the tension remains between tattoos as art and tattoos as a mark of crime. The story of Yakuza tattoos reminds us that tattoos do not mean the same thing everywhere. A tattoo that represents beauty, pride, or identity in one culture can represent fear, exclusion, or rebellion in another. Tattoos live inside social rules, not just skin. And that takes us to our next segment, health, regulation, and modern responsibility. As tattoos have become more common around the world, especially in Europe, the Americas, and among younger generations, a new question has become impossible to ignore. What does it mean to tattoo responsibly in the modern world? This is where the story of tattoos moves away from tradition and symbolism and enters the fields of medicine, public health, and regulation. For most of history, tattoos were done with very basic tools, and health risks were high. Infections were common, and there was little understanding of bacteria or hygiene. Today, professional tattoo studios follow strict rules: sterile needles, disposable materials, gloves, and proper aftercare instructions. Look at all this equipment in our picture. They're using all the gloves and everything. Thanks to these practices, tattoos are generally safe when done by trained professionals. However, generally safe does not mean risk-free. Medical research has shown that tattoos can sometimes lead to skin infections. Ooh, imagine. Allergic reactions, and long-term skin problems. Some people react badly to certain pigments, especially red and yellow inks, which are more likely to cause itching, swelling, or chronic inflammation. In rare cases, tattoos can interfere with medical procedures such as MRI scans, causing discomfort or skin irritation due to metal traces in some inks. More recently, scientists have begun to study what happens to tattoo ink inside the body over time. Studies using imaging and biopsies have shown that ink particles do not stay only in the skin. Tiny particles can travel through the body and accumulate in lymph nodes, which are part of the immune system. This does not automatically mean tattoos are dangerous, but it has raised important questions about long-term exposure and unknown effects. Because of these concerns, governments have started to regulate tattoo inks more seriously. In the European Union, new rules introduced under the REACH regulation restrict or ban thousands of chemical substances that were previously used in tattoo inks, including pigments suspected of causing cancer or genetic damage. This regulation has forced tattoo artists and ink manufacturers to rethink their materials and methods. These regulations have also created debate. Some tattoo artists worry about limited color options or higher costs, while public health experts argue that safety must come first. What is clear is that tattoos are no longer seen only as personal choices. They are also public health matters. Modern responsibility applies to both sides. Tattoo artists are expected to stay informed, trained, and compliant with health standards. Clients, on the other hand, are encouraged to research studios carefully, understand the risks, follow aftercare instructions, and think long term. A tattoo is permanent, and so are many of its consequences. In this modern context, tattoos reflect a balance between freedom of expression and collective responsibility. The skin becomes a place where art, science, law, and ethics meet. What was once a purely cultural or ritual act is now also a decision shaped by medical knowledge and regulation. Tattoos today are not just about who we are. They are also about how carefully we choose to carry that identity into the future. And that takes us to our next segment, temporary marks, but lasting meaning. As tattoos have become more popular, many people have also begun to ask a different question. Is it possible to mark the body without doing it forever? This question has led to the rise of modern alternatives to permanent tattoos, as well as renewed interest in traditional temporary body art, such as henna in India. Here in the picture, beautifully decorated hands. One of the most common modern alternatives is the temporary tattoo. These can last from a few days to several weeks and are often used for festivals, performances, or personal experimentation. While they do not carry the same weight as permanent tattoos, they allow people to explore identity, style, and self-expression without long-term commitment. Another option is semi-permanent or fade tattoos. which use inks designed to break down over time. These tattoos may last several months or a few years, depending on the technique and the body. While still relatively new and sometimes controversial, they reflect a modern desire for flexibility in how the body is marked. There are also cosmetic and medical alternatives such as airbrush tattoos or skin-safe paints, often used in fashion, film, or advertising. These practices show how body marking has entered creative industries while avoiding permanence and medical risk. Alongside these modern options, many cultures have long traditions of temporary body art. One of the most important examples, again, is henna, known as mehndi in India and other parts of South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Henna is made from the leaves of the henna plant and stains the skin in shades of orange, red, or brown. Unlike tattoos, henna does not break the skin. The dye binds to the top layers of skin and fades naturally over 1 to 3 weeks. In Indian culture, henna is deeply symbolic. It is traditionally applied during weddings, religious festivals, and life celebrations. Bridal henna designs are especially detailed and meaningful, often symbolizing joy, fertility, protection, and good fortune. The temporary nature of henna is not a weakness, it is part of its meaning. The design appears, darkens, fades, and disappears, reflecting change and transition. Henna also reminds us that body art does not need to be permanent to be powerful. Its beauty lies in the moment, the ritual, and the shared experience. Families and communities often gather to apply henna together, turning the act into a social and emotional event. When we compare modern temporary tattoos with traditional henna, we see an interesting connection. Both reflect a desire to mark identity without fixing it forever. In a fast changing world, many people prefer expressions that can evolve with time. This brings us back to a central idea of the episode: body markings, whether permanent or temporary, are tools humans use to explore who they are now, not only who they will always be. Ink, scars, henna, or paint, each method carries meaning shaped by culture, history, and choice. Okay, and here we are going to have a final reflection. Marks that speak beyond the skin. From the first marks carved into skin with stone tools to the fine lines drawn by modern tattoo machines, humans have always felt the need to leave signs on their bodies. These marks were never only decoration, they were messages. They said who someone was, where they belonged, what they believed, or what they had survived. Across history, the body became a kind of living surface where culture, faith, power, and memory could be written. In some societies, tattoos and scars were earned through ritual and pain, proving strength or loyalty. In others, they were signs of protection, beauty, or connection to the spiritual world. Even when the meaning changed, the desire remained the same: to make the invisible parts of identity visible. In the modern world, tattoos are more common than ever, yet their meaning has become more personal and more complex. For some people, a tattoo is a memory that should never fade. For others, it is an act of rebellion, art of self creation. At the same time, the rise of temporary tattoos, the one we mentioned, henna, and non permanent body art, shows a new way of thinking, one that accepts change, uncertainty, and growth as part of identity. This contrast between permanent ink and temporary marks tells us something important about our time. We live in a world that moves quickly, where identities are not fixed, and people often reinvent themselves. Some choose tattoos that last forever. Others prefer marks that disappear. Neither choice is empty. Both are meaningful. Yet, this freedom also brings responsibility. Today, we understand more about health risks, environmental impact, and the long term effects of what we put on our bodies. Body art is no longer only about expression, it is also about awareness. Knowing the materials, respecting the body, and understanding cultural origins matter more than ever. In the end, tattoos, scars, and temporary designs all remind us the same truth. The human body is not just biological, it is cultural, emotional, and historical. Every mark, whether permanent or fleeting, tells a story about how humans see themselves in the world. Some stories are meant to last forever, others are meant to fade. Both leave traces not only on the skin, but in memory, tradition, and meaning. Okay, thank you so much for spending this time with me on Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. I hope you enjoyed our journey on the history of tattoos and discovered how even the most ordinary things can carry deep cultural meaning. If this episode helped you see everyday life a little differently, or helped you connect language with history and culture in a new way, then this episode has done exactly what it was meant to do. Learning English is not only about grammar or vocabulary, it is also about understanding how people live, think, and express values through simple actions. This season, we will continue exploring unusual yet meaningful topics that reveal the strong connection between language, history, and daily experience. Each episode is designed to help you improve your listening skills, expand your vocabulary, and develop a deeper awareness of how culture shapes communication. If you found today's episode useful or interesting, feel free to share it with your classmates, friends, or fellow English learners. Learning becomes stronger when it is shared, discussed, and experienced together. And if you'd like to share your thoughts, reflections, or feedbacks, we would truly love to hear from you. Your ideas help us grow, and your voice helps shape future episodes. This podcast exists for learners like you, curious, thoughtful, and committed to improving step by step. We'll be back next week with another topic that may surprise you, make you reflect, or inspire new conversations in English. Until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep exploring the world through language. And as always, keep speaking up. Until next time, thank you very much. See you next week. Thank you.
Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to UMNH Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.